If you thought Amazon couldn't sink lower than last year, you might want to sit down. In 2025, Prime membership cancellations are spiking at the fastest rate since the service launched, and independent trackers show customer satisfaction sliding. The American Customer Satisfaction Index ranked Amazon's online retail score in the low 80s for 2024-25, part of a wider drop across the sector. Sellers are bailing under absurd fees and sudden account purges. Meanwhile, the new AI shopping assistant is steering buyers toward knockoffs and irrelevant junk. By the end, you'll know which of these risks hit your wallet and where to shop instead. And the first clue is in the numbers Amazon won't share. The numbers Amazon doesn't want you to see. Amazon may still dominate online retail by total sales, but just under that record-setting surface are indicators pointing to a shift the company isn't highlighting. In 2025, consumer search data shows that Cancel Amazon Prime has become the most searched subscription cancellation term, according to aggregated keyword analyses from tools like Ahrefs and SimilarWeb. At the same time, online community threads discussing Prime cancellations on platforms like Reddit and in coverage from outlets such as Mashable are seeing their busiest activity in years. Taken together, these suggest that more people are at least considering walking away from a subscription that was once treated as untouchable. This doesn't mean Amazon's losing an exact, measurable percentage of Prime members. Those figures aren't public, but the directional signs are there, and they've been consistent for months. Where earlier dips in Prime enthusiasm could be pinned on an annual fee increase or a short-term service issue, this pattern looks more like sustained unease. The public still hears plenty about product launches, AI-driven shopping tools, and expanded streaming libraries, but less about how well Prime is holding its ground as a standalone membership. Amazon's latest round of investor communications followed that template closely. The focus was weighted toward forward-looking technology, logistics automation, Alexa integrations, machine learning product discovery. These topics are safe territory. They frame Amazon as an innovator and sidestep the question of how many households are actually renewing Prime. When usage data is shared, it's often rolled up into engagement across Amazon services, which can include everything from Twitch activity to Kindle reading. It's a way to talk about broad platform stickiness without giving a clear read on whether Prime itself is losing momentum. That emphasis helps keep the narrative optimistically future-focused. Investors see growth in gross merchandise volume, advertisers read about new retail media opportunities, and customers get app updates touting smarter recommendations. But cracks in the original Prime value proposition are plain to those using it daily. Two-day shipping has become more of a suggestion in certain areas. Streaming benefits feel thinner as studios pull content elsewhere. Product searches take longer to sift through because relevant items are buried under paid placements. These are small degradations individually, but layered together over months or years, they change how people see the subscription fee hitting their card. Industry-wide metrics add context. The American Customer Satisfaction Index and other retail trackers have reported some softness in online retail sentiment since 2022, with Amazon's own ACSI score still landing in the low 80s but edging down modestly. That's not a collapse, it's still high, but it does mark a direction shift from the near unassailable highs Amazon used to enjoy. Combined with slower growth in new sign-ups in mature markets like the US, UK, and Japan, there's less cushion to counterbalance potential losses. Internationally, expansion still happens, but at a slower pace, constrained by regulatory scrutiny and entrenched local competitors. That means the once reliable math, offsetting any one region's losses with another's rapid growth, isn't as effective. Rising average order values and increased upselling now carry more of the revenue growth load. It works as long as each purchase generates more income, but it's a fragile setup. If average order size dips while the Prime base erodes, the impact can be immediate. Prime members are core to more than subscription revenue. Their buying patterns, more frequent orders, subscriptions to additional Amazon services, willingness to stick even when pricing is less competitive, underpin multiple high-margin parts of the business. When those members leave, the loss reverberates. Advertising becomes a bigger piece of the profit puzzle, and that has downstream effects on the shopping experience itself. As ad density increases, search results feel less like curated retail and more like a pay-to-play marketplace, which can further frustrate the remaining base. The public messaging around this is measured. Amazon's official line is that ongoing investment in AI, convenience features, and content will keep memberships attractive. The logic, deliver more integrated value, bolster engagement, and renewals will follow. But that thinking glosses over the fundamentals. Faster, reliable shipping, relevant search results, and a straightforward store remain central to why Prime made sense in the first place. If any of those slip too far, extra features won't be enough to reverse a negative perception. Customer sentiment, visible in social posts and comment threads, is less a burst of outrage and more a steady murmur of dissatisfaction. Long-time subscribers share composite stories, packages arriving late without explanation, platform bloat, a navigation experience that leans toward whoever paid for visibility instead of what's best for the buyer. These threads repeat across geographies and income brackets. That's important. It suggests the friction points aren't isolated glitches, but widely felt shifts in the shopping model. The harder hit, if it keeps building, comes from seeing loyal households decide they've had enough. Trial members churning after a month is one problem. Families unsubscribing after 7 or 8 years is another altogether. Winning those people back takes more than a promotional credit. It takes a rebuild of trust and perceived value. Companies the size of Amazon can absorb unfavorable optics for a while, but steady attrition chips away at predictability. Revenue that once felt locked in starts to vary, and fewer levers remain if the decline accelerates. There's a natural question that follows from all this. If membership isn't the unshakable pillar it used to be, what's stepping in to carry more of the load? And here's where the internal shift in Amazon's business priorities starts to become visible, in ways most shoppers encounter every time they search for something. From customer-focused to ad machine. Type a product into Amazon's search bar today, and the results page often feels more like scanning an advertising catalog than browsing a store. You can enter the exact model or brand, and yet the first results you see aren't always what you searched for. Instead, they're a stack of listings marked with that small, sponsored tag. Research and user testing from e-commerce analysts have found these sponsored spots becoming increasingly prominent, pushing down, or in some cases displacing, organic listings that are highly relevant or have strong reviews. In 2025, this isn't a side feature of the site. For many shoppers, it's the first and most persistent thing they encounter. That's a big change from when rankings were largely determined by product quality, price competitiveness, and reliability. Now paid placement has been layered more heavily into the recommendation engine. Relevance still matters, but it can be overtaken if another seller bids higher for visibility. In practical terms, this means a lesser product can edge out the one you actually want, just by paying to occupy that prime space. The effect is subtle at first. You'll still find the item you were looking for several scrolls later, but once you spot the pattern, it's difficult to unsee. The problem goes beyond minor inconvenience. Investigations and seller reports suggest that this ad-weighted approach, combined with inconsistent moderation in some categories, can make it easier for low-quality or even counterfeit items to appear in high-visibility slots. Amazon says its detection tools block a large share of infringing products, and the company publicizes the millions of counterfeits it seizes annually. But brand owners and buyer communities still report cases where knockoffs get top placement through ad bidding, especially in competitive niches like phone accessories, cosmetics, and certain packaged goods. It's an ongoing enforcement challenge in an environment where visibility is for sale. This shift in search dynamics directly affects the economics for sellers. A merchant with a well-reviewed, fairly priced product is now forced to compete in two arenas: the organic ranking system and the paid ad auctions. Those who want to maintain visibility end up spending significant amounts on sponsored placements just to hold on to positions they previously earned through merit. Because ad charges are per click, not per sale, those costs can climb quickly without any assurance of conversion, turning advertising into a major fixed cost. The incentive for Amazon is easy to spot in its financials. Advertising has grown into one of the company's fastest rising revenue streams, and by cautious estimates is now a tens of billions of dollars per year business. While product sales and prime fees are leveling off in key markets, ad services are hitting new records. Sponsored listings, brand display campaigns, and promotional videos embedded in product pages now account for a far bigger share of the revenue mix than just a few years ago. It's a logical pivot from a business perspective, but the user experience pays the price. The downside shows up in the way shoppers interpret the results they see. Surveys from independent retail analysts and feedback gathered through shopper panels suggest that fewer customers now believe that Amazon's top listings reflect the best available products. This doesn't necessarily stop people from buying. Convenience is still a powerful draw, but it creates a growing gap between what customers expect from the marketplace and what they experience. Over time, that gap can erode loyalty. Amazon appears willing to bet on the inertia of its customer base. For many users, if the first sponsored item in the list looks close enough to what they wanted, that's what they'll buy. That behavior feeds the ad revenue cycle. But other segments of shoppers are adapting differently. Some check third-party review sites before purchasing or comparison shop on rival platforms. Others use Amazon as a search tool for ideas, but make the final purchase directly from a brand's website to bypass the clutter. For Prime members, there's another layer to the frustration. Their subscription was supposed to represent the most streamlined experience Amazon could offer: fast shipping, easy search, and minimal friction in finding the right product. Now, when that experience starts to resemble an ad-heavy search feed, it chips away at the value proposition. That loss of perceived exclusivity can weigh on renewal decisions, especially when the other core benefits of Prime are under scrutiny. Even Amazon's own private label products sometimes appear to benefit from the ad-first approach, ranking prominently in ways that don't always align with customer ratings. That fuels perceptions that the store is no longer a neutral matchmaker between buyer and seller, but an environment where every square inch of visibility is another line item in Amazon's profit strategy. For a retailer that once built its reputation on consumer trust, this is not a trivial branding issue. The scale of the ad operation in 2025 underscores the stakes. Ad revenue now dwarfs what Amazon made from Prime memberships a decade ago, highlighting how central paid placement has become to the business model. Strategically, monetizing the shopper's first glance is lucrative, but each time a customer recognizes that their search results are designed primarily to sell their attention to the highest bidder, the perception of the marketplace shifts, incrementally but materially. Signs suggest this trajectory isn't reversing. New formats, sponsored video in search, brand discovery panels in checkout, display ads inside streaming menus, are expanding the reach of Amazon's ad inventory. For sellers, advertising costs are now a non-negotiable part of operating on the platform. For buyers, it cements the understanding that top placement is frequently bought placement. For Amazon, it sharpens a balancing act. How far can the experience tilt toward monetization before either side decides their value equation no longer holds? The trend lines are clear enough. Ad revenue rises, sentiment indicators edge down. The friction between the two is manageable for now, but trust doesn't recover on the same schedule as income statements. And while Amazon is betting it can keep both sides engaged, its next big play to keep shoppers inside the ecosystem is already in motion. And that's where things take another turn. The AI shopping assistant nobody asked for. Amazon's latest experiment in smarter shopping is its redesigned AI shopping assistant, a conversational tool pitched as a way to make finding products faster, simpler, and more personal. The promise was that by learning your preferences and filtering through Amazon's vast inventory, it could deliver exactly what you wanted without forcing you to scroll through dozens of pages. In their own messaging, Amazon framed it as an evolution of the one-click purchase, a personal shopper embedded in the site, capable of cutting straight to the right choice. What debuted in 2025 hasn't entirely matched that picture. While some early users found it novel, others testing the feature, both casually and in formal user experience studies, ran into the same friction points that have plagued other AI-driven tools: discoverability and accuracy. In usability testing reported by the Nielsen-Norman Group, many shoppers either overlooked the assistant entirely or weren't sure how to invoke it. Those who did try it sometimes received results that bore little resemblance to their requests. This wasn't just a matter of clumsy formatting. It occasionally returned entirely irrelevant products, a classic example of AI hallucination. Customer reports and seller anecdotes have pointed to another trend. The assistant can sometimes elevate items of lower quality, and in certain cases, ones flagged as sponsored further down the page. PYMNTS and GeekWire noted similar issues in their coverage, where the assistant's selections mirrored paid placement patterns elsewhere on Amazon's platform. While there's no conclusive evidence that it's hardwired to push counterfeits, critics and brand owners say the feature can unintentionally boost visibility for listings that don't meet quality expectations. Counterfeit protection is a significant part of Amazon's public posture. In its 2024 brand protection report, the company stated it blocked over 99% of suspected infringing listings before a brand had to file a notice, and it seized more than 15 million counterfeit products worldwide. Yet independent reporting and brand complaints show that some problem listings still make it through, and in certain ranking or ad-driven scenarios, they get amplified. It's within this gap that the AI assistant operates, inheriting the same uneven product pool as any other search interface. Some documented examples underline the stakes. one consumer seeking a new mid-range set of wireless earbuds received a list with an obscure label at the top, from a seller only weeks old, despite asking for a well-known brand. Another shopper requested pet grooming scissors and found unrelated kitchen shears in their AI-generated cart. In isolation, these are small misfires. But in categories like health products, cleaning supplies, or baby gear, the risk from an inaccurate suggestion is more than just wasting money. It can be unsafe. Part of the issue comes from how the feature packages its recommendations. Rather than showing a traditional grid of search results, the assistant can present optimized shopping carts already filled with items it deems suitable. In theory, this saves time. In practice, these bundles sometimes mix relevant items with unrelated or seemingly random additions that can look suspiciously like opportunistic upsells. One well-shared screenshot showed a newborn essentials cart that began with bottles and bibs, then veered into novelty electronics and finance books. For a shopper expecting curation, this combination undermines trust. From the buyer's perspective, the assistant presents itself as a trustworthy filter, removing the burden of thorough vetting. That expectation is part of why Amazon's original search experience worked. People assumed the top results reflected reliability. When the AI fails, the disappointment is sharper because it was positioned as the problem solver. Shoppers begin double-checking every recommendation, erasing the convenience it was supposed to offer. Sellers have their own concerns. Competing for visibility in the assistant's outputs may mean paying for more sponsored placements or optimizing around whatever inputs the AI favors, much in the same way they already play the existing ranking systems. For those not investing heavily in ads, there's a real risk of dropping out of view entirely if the assistant becomes a primary entry point for a certain share of users. The underlying limitations aren't mysterious. Amazon's marketplace is too large and fluid to guarantee that every surfaced listing meets the highest quality standards, and the AI layer doesn't fix that. It reorders the same inventory through a different interface, without integrating stronger verification checks into its logic, something beyond the current filtering systems. It will continue to surface marginal or irrelevant results alongside the good ones. For Amazon, the feature still ticks important boxes. It makes for a strong talking point in investor calls about AI innovation. It potentially increases exposure for a wider range of products, and it nudges some users into impulse purchases they might not have made otherwise. Even if there's a spike in returns or complaints, the overall sales lift could justify it internally. For customers already questioning the value of their Prime membership, the assistant isn't a new reason to stay. It's another example of how the platform's customer-first image now has to coexist with commercial priorities that can degrade the experience. And in a product ecosystem where the line between helpful and intrusive technology is getting thinner, frustration with one flagship AI feature can spill over into their perception of others running in the background. The Alexa overhaul that broke the brand. Alexa was once one of Amazon's most recognizable consumer brands. It lived in millions of homes, handled day-to-day tasks with minimal friction, and led the voice assistant market while rivals were still working out what to build. But that lead eroded, and in 2025, Amazon's bid to reclaim momentum unfolded more like a stress test that exposed deep problems. The overhaul was pitched as a reinvention, more capable, more personalized, more proactive. What many users saw instead was a mix of reliability issues, long-standing integrations breaking without warning, and the creeping sense that functions they'd relied on for years were now gated or monetized differently. One of the biggest shocks came from the rollout of premium enhancements. These were not just novelty celebrity voices, but more natural-sounding speech or advanced conversational features that many assumed would be standard upgrades. The need to pay a recurring fee for those left longtime customers feeling as if core improvements had been reclassified as extras. For someone who had invested in Alexa early on, this wasn't new value. It was a bill for keeping the experience at a level they thought they'd already bought. Amazon also pushed a new skill framework meant to help Alexa handle more complex multi-step requests. On paper, it sounded like the kind of innovation users had been asking for. In practice, it magnified existing problems. Established commands that had worked for years, controlling certain smart home devices, placing specific food orders, or checking schedules, started throwing errors or failing silently. In some cases, commands had to be rephrased in more rigid formats, slowing people down and undermining the very hands-free pitch that built Alexa's appeal. The Alexa app redesign compounded frustrations. Rather than streamlining device management and skill settings, the new interface emphasized promotions for Amazon Music, Audible, and exclusive shopping deals. Controls that used to be easily accessible were moved several layers deeper into menus, with some functions shifted entirely to the app instead of being set directly on the device. Users read this less as an upgrade and more as a signpost toward Amazon's commercial priorities. Personalization, supposedly the centerpiece of the update, often didn't land. In real-world use, the assistant fell back on generic outputs rather than tailoring responses to individual preferences. Music playback routed repeatedly to Amazon's own service, even when another was set as default. Shopping prompts surfaced Amazon's private label products or sponsored listings far more often than third-party brands. Instead of feeling understood, customers suspected the system was steering them toward Amazon's most profitable inventory. Underpinning all of this were technical hurdles that even Amazon's leadership has acknowledged. Rohit Prasad, who heads Alexa development, has spoken publicly about the complexity of making Alexa more agentic, able to reason through multi-step processes without introducing new failure modes. Industry coverage in outlets like the Financial Times and PYMNTS has pointed to latency spikes, hallucination risks in generative responses, and the difficulty of maintaining tens of thousands of third-party skill integrations in a moving environment. These are not small problems, and they slowed feature rollout even after the update went live. Market data reflects the strain, though not as dramatically as some critics describe. Amazon doesn't disclose Alexa device sales, but independent trackers reported a slowdown in smart speaker shipments in 2024-25 versus earlier years, including softer performance during promotional periods that used to deliver big spikes. Google Assistant devices matched or overtook Alexa in some regions for the first time, helped by the absence of separate fees for new voice capabilities and cleaner device integration. For anyone who had architected their home around Alexa, the disruptions became more expensive. Older thermostats, smart plugs, and security systems that depended on now deprecated skills either lost functionality or worked only intermittently. Replacing or reconfiguring those systems added unplanned cost on top of the subscription, prompts appearing in the voice interface. For casual users, that was an inconvenience. For committed adopters, it was a hit to both the wallet and the patience they had for Amazon's ecosystem. Social media amplified the discontent. Videos comparing old and new Alexa responses racked up views by showing slower performance, misunderstood commands, and prompts to subscribe for features. The idea that Alexa had become a less reliable, more commercialized version of itself picked up traction, whether or not every household experienced the same issues. Manufacturers reacted too. In earlier years, Works with Alexa had been a selling point printed prominently on packaging. By 2025, more smart home makers were leading with Works with Alexa, Google Assistant, and Siri, or dropping voice integrations from their marketing entirely. For them, compatibility still had value, but tying a product's identity to Alexa no longer felt like a safe bet. From Amazon's perspective, the logic behind the overhaul was straightforward: deepen engagement, expand Alexa's role in the home, and find clear revenue pathways in a category where hardware margins are thin. The problem was that in doing so, they compromised what made the assistant stick in the first place. Alexa's early success came from the fact that it just worked, quickly, predictably, and without demanding that users check which features were free and which carried a price. That shift has implications beyond the device category. Alexa has been more than a product line. It's been a public symbol of Amazon's ability to bring frontier technology into ordinary households. When that symbol starts to look like another sales channel at the expense of reliability, it chips away at the broader trust Amazon has cultivated in its tech offerings. For consumers, the lesson is immediate. If you own Alexa devices, review what's now behind a paywall and decide if those features are worth the ongoing cost. Watch for any integrations you depend on that may be deprecated in future updates, and weigh whether a competing assistant better fits your needs without monthly fees. The financial calculus matters, especially if upgrades to maintain the same level of functionality push you into ongoing payments you didn't originally sign up for. For Amazon, the risk is less about losing the smart speaker war today and more about losing the habit-forming presence Alexa once had. In a world where most people already own at least one voice-enabled device, replacement cycles are slow, and shifts in brand loyalty stick. A prolonged period of technical frustrations, perceived nickel and diming, and weaker integration can make customers less likely to keep Alexa as the center of their connected home. The result is a quieter, steadier erosion than a headline-grabbing collapse. Every user who stops relying on Alexa daily becomes a little less tied to Amazon's wider set of services. And that's the deeper cost. Each exit closes off a small but important touchpoint that once kept people buying, streaming, and subscribing through Amazon without a second thought. The silent escape of Amazon's sellers. While customer-facing changes have been drawing attention, a quieter shift is playing out behind the scenes. Growing numbers of sellers are rethinking, and in some cases reducing, their reliance on Amazon. Many longtime merchants say the economics and operating conditions in 2025 look different enough that staying all in now feels like a risk. Documented grievances in industry reporting and seller forums point to rising costs, changing fee structures, and increased account uncertainty as key reasons why some are scaling back or diversifying toward other sales channels. For years, Fulfilled by Amazon was the default path for ambitious brands. By paying referrals and storage and fulfillment fees, sellers gained Prime eligibility, warehousing, and instant exposure to millions of potential buyers. But the cost side has kept inching upward, and according to recent fee updates, 2025 brought some of the steepest changes yet. Alongside higher baseline charges, Amazon introduced surcharges tied to inventory age, order volume, and seasonal spikes. A miscalculation in stock turnover can erase margins within a single billing cycle. For smaller operators, that level of volatility makes pricing and planning far more difficult. Sellers in modern retail's coverage describe finding products profitable one month and underwater the next as new surcharges kicked in or warehouse rates jumped. Adding to the tension are periodic, and in the view of many sellers, opaque suspensions. These account freezes, documented by law firms like the AMZ seller's attorney and widely discussed in large seller groups, can stem from suspected violations that turn out to be vague or unfounded. False positives in AI-driven enforcement are a recurring theme in those complaints. The appeals process is slow, often measured in weeks or months, during which a seller's stock in Amazon's facilities sits idle. Even reinstatement doesn't always bring clarity, as explanations for what triggered the suspension can be minimal. The result is a sense that years of perfect operational history are no safeguard against a sudden loss of trading ability. Counterfeits continue to complicate life for legitimate brands. When imitation products undercut an authentic listing, the backlash from disappointed customers often lands on the real seller. Industry reporting and trader accounts describe situations where return rates soared after counterfeit contamination, and where Amazon's systems still attributed those returns to the original merchant, hurting their performance metrics. In crowded categories such as fashion accessories, small electronics, and supplements, this is seen as a structural hazard of selling on the platform. External tracking of seller totals reflects these pressures. Third-party analysts have noted localized declines in the number of active sellers in mature markets, including the US and UK, in contrast with the steady growth of previous years. The departure trend isn't limited to low-volume or short-term accounts. Some established brands that built their profile through Amazon are now investing more heavily in direct-to-consumer fulfillment or other marketplaces. Seller pushback has also taken more organized form, with modern retail reporting on boycotts and joint demands for more predictable fee policies. The landscape beyond Amazon looks better prepared to catch those leaving. Shopify has expanded fulfillment partnerships and made marketing automation more accessible, letting small brands replicate aspects of Amazon's delivery speed without ceding customer data. TikTok Shop integrates product listings directly into social content feeds, a format that some sellers say yields better conversion for younger audiences. Etsy, while retaining its handcrafted identity, has broadened to accommodate more design-focused small businesses and offers a customer base known for loyalty to its curated environment. Each of these has its own costs and competition, but offers greater autonomy over branding, listings, and customer relationships. Industry coverage offers concrete examples without needing to name the brands involved. In one case highlighted by Modern Retail, a merchant reported being locked out of their account during the holiday rush over an alleged listing violation, losing access to both inventory and customers while competitors stayed visible. In another, discussed in seller forums, months-long counterfeit issues degraded a brand's review score to the point where its top product permanently lost the buy box. In both situations, the companies shifted resources to other channels rather than rebuilding on Amazon. For Amazon, the impact of each exit is not just the loss of fee revenue from that seller, but a gradual thinning of the catalog with well-known, reliable products. Placeholders may spring up to occupy the same search slots, but if their quality or authenticity is lower, customer trust can erode. The platform can preserve broad selection in terms of item count, while losing depth and reliability in a way that's much harder to replace. Public discussion of this trend is limited by the structure of the marketplace itself. Sellers who air grievances too loudly risk drawing more intense scrutiny, whether through stepped-up audits or sudden reviews of listings. As a result, departures often happen quietly, fewer SKUs uploaded, less advertising on Amazon's pages, gradual redirection of stock toward other fulfillment centers. By the time a shopper realizes a favorite brand's Amazon page looks neglected, that company may have re-established its presence elsewhere. The longer-term risk comes from the shift in who remains. As veteran sellers leave and barriers to entry fall for less scrupulous operators, the competition for visibility can tilt toward those focused on rapid turnover and aggressive bidding for ad space, regardless of product standards. That can reinforce the cycle of higher fees, counterfeit infiltration, and quality concerns, making the environment less predictable for conscientious merchants. With fewer high-trust players anchoring search results, the shopping experience changes in ways customers notice over time. Amazon's recent seller strategy has emphasized increasing revenue per existing account rather than simply expanding the total number. This can produce short-term gains from surcharges and advertising, but the data on seller exits and grievances suggests that the approach carries longer-term risks for diversity and quality in the marketplace. The sellers themselves are not just competitors, they are a supply base, a source of advertising revenue, and through their product choices, part of the appeal that draws consumers in the first place. While there's no single tipping point yet, the combined effect of rising operational costs, unpredictable enforcement, and counterfeit exposure has motivated a meaningful subset of sellers to put time and resources into other platforms. Those who succeed outside Amazon can be hard to lure back, especially once they control their own branding and customers directly. For prospective or current sellers, the practical takeaway is clear and simple. Keep a close eye on fee changes, evaluate the operational risks, and diversify sales channels before dependency on any one platform becomes a liability. The strain on Amazon's seller ecosystem is only one piece of the wider operational picture. Inside its own facilities, the company has been restructuring how orders get processed and shipped, with results that, according to recent reports, bring their own set of challenges. The warehouse automation nightmare. One major area where those operational pressures are playing out is in Amazon's fulfillment centers. Senior executives have made no secret about why automation is such a high priority. Amazon is the second largest private employer in the United States, and its warehouses have some of the highest turnover rates in the industry. Recruiting and retaining enough people to move hundreds of millions of packages a month is expensive and increasingly difficult, especially in regions where Amazon already dominates the local labor pool. Automation and AI-driven systems were pitched as the way to lessen that dependency, speed up throughput, and eventually reduce costs. The concept was straightforward. Autonomous mobile robots would handle repetitive transport tasks. Robotic arms would scan, sort, and package a broader variety of items, and an AI-coordinated control layer would orchestrate the movement of goods with minimal human oversight. In practice, early deployments in 2025 ran into the complexities of Amazon's actual warehouse environment. There are reports from workers and internal accounts of autonomous carriers stalling in high-traffic aisles, blocking each other at turns, or pausing mid-route until manually moved. What looked smooth in controlled DMOS became less predictable when scaled up among thousands of storage racks and dozens of simultaneous processes. Order accuracy has also faced a learning curve. The vision systems guiding some of the new robotic arms, designed to recognize and handle items of varying shapes and sizes, have occasionally missorted lighter goods or paired the wrong product with an outbound order. Employees in affected facilities say these errors create repackaging queues that can ripple through the day's schedule. While the error rate may be low in percentage terms, the sheer volume of items moving through each site means even a small increase can absorb a lot of time and attention. Safety has become another point of adjustment. Faster robot movement to meet ambitious throughput targets changes the rhythm of shared working spaces. Workers in some facilities have documented minor collisions between robots and pallets, or near misses in narrow aisles, prompting on-the-fly updates to safety protocols. These aren't widespread shutdown-level incidents, but they illustrate the trade-offs in mixing human and machine activity at scale. The human side of the workforce has also been reshaped. Remaining employees often have to bridge the gap between robotics and reality, troubleshooting guided vehicles stuck mid-route, clearing jammed conveyors, or stepping in when automated sorters misread a package. These aren't the same tasks most were trained for when they started, and learning multiple systems lengthens training cycles. In some cases, floor supervisors have reallocated experienced pickers and packers into quasi-technical roles to keep orders moving. While Amazon does not break out delivery metrics tied directly to specific technology changes, logistics analysts who monitor customer-facing performance have noted that some sites in their sample set, particularly those with recent automation upgrades, saw modest dips in speed consistency during the bedding-in period. Facilities that push large volumes for prime customers and major marketplace sellers are especially sensitive to even small slowdowns, because those delays can quickly translate into out-of-stock listings or missed delivery promises. Externally, Amazon's line is that automation is a long-term investment, and some inefficiency is expected during transitions. Internally, the challenge has been balancing rollout speed with integration quality. Background reports indicate that live testing windows before a major upgrade were sometimes short, reflecting a drive to install systems ahead of peak demand seasons. That accelerates capital deployment, but increases the likelihood of early-phase friction. Customers tend to notice in small ways: shipment tracking that sits in, preparing, longer than usual delivery estimates that stretch a day or two beyond what Prime members have come to expect, or a handful of items arriving later than the rest of an order. For lower margin, high-competition retail categories, even that can affect purchase choices if other retailers can guarantee tighter delivery windows. The knock-on effects for sellers who use Fulfilled by Amazon go further. Inventory intake is tied to warehouse schedules. When a facility is backed up, new stock might take days longer to become sellable. That lag leaves products vulnerable to being temporarily unavailable, pushing sales toward competitors. Storage and fulfillment charges don't pause while inventory sits in processing, meaning a slow intake can cut directly into a seller's margins. The integration of automation also changes how exceptions are handled. Humans are far better at packaging irregular or delicate items, or orders with complex instructions, than current automated systems. Under the new model, many humans now handle these cases at the point where automation fails an order, rather than overseeing every step. This reactive role can feel more pressurized, because it's often about salvaging the schedule rather than setting it. From a strategic point of view, the capital intensity of automation is not trivial. Investments in advanced robotics and AI systems come alongside Amazon's broader spending on data centers and infrastructure for its cloud and AI ambitions. The combined outlay is intended to generate returns over years, not months. But until the systems operate reliably at full scale, the potential cost savings on labor can be offset by the inefficiencies and learning curve incidents seen in some 2025 upgrades. The bigger picture is that fulfillment performance underpins much of Amazon's value to both customers and sellers. Two-day shipping has been central to Prime's appeal. Accurate, on-time orders maintain marketplace credibility. Anything that erodes that reliability, even at the margins, can influence renewal rates and seller loyalty. In a year when other divisions are grappling with their own trust and quality challenges, the fulfillment network's performance is under closer scrutiny. Automation was never guaranteed to be a seamless fix. Machines avoid certain human limitations. They don't take breaks or call in sick, but they are dependent on software and hardware functioning as intended, and updating hundreds of units across dozens of facilities is a logistical operation in itself. Small faults at scale can have outsized impact in a high-volume network, and a backlog in the update or repair cycle keeps those faults in play longer than anyone would like. For now, the rollout continues, with adjustments and retraining aimed at smoothing over the rough edges. The rationale remains the same: reduce reliance on a high-turnover labor pool, control long-term operating costs, and keep pace with competitors in logistics technology. The question is how much short-term friction the network and its customers will tolerate along the way. If you rely on Amazon FBA or Prime shipping for personal shopping, or as part of a side business supply chain, it's worth assuming that periods of transition can introduce intermittent delays. Keep alternative fulfillment options in play so that a bottleneck in one facility isn't the single point of failure in your own operations. And these fulfillment dynamics have implications that extend well beyond Amazon's internal logistics, touching entire regional economies that depend, directly or indirectly, on the way its network operates. Collateral damage to small businesses and local economies. When Amazon's presence in a region is discussed, most people think first about the sellers who operate inside its marketplace, brands and merchants adapting to its rules, its fees, and its customer base. But the effects run much wider. Beyond the sellers who choose to list on Amazon, its pricing model, logistics network, and scale are reshaping local economies in ways that touch retailers, service providers, and delivery operators who never sold a single thing on the site. For many, that influence is felt as a steady competitive squeeze. For others, it has opened new distribution channels. The outcome is a mixed one, but the pressure on traditional business structures is undeniable. Local brick and mortar shops have been competing with Amazon for years, but the disparity in 2025 is starker. The combination of nearly real-time price matching, persistent discounting, and faster shipping has tightened the margin for smaller stores to survive. An electronics shop that once stayed in business by offering expert advice, repairs, or niche items not stocked in chain stores now finds that a customer can have a replacement cable or remote shipped overnight for less than the store pays wholesale. Even long-established businesses with deep community roots can see customer loyalty tip towards speed and convenience over in-person familiarity. The arrival of a major Amazon fulfillment or sortation hub also changes the regional business lattice in less visible ways. Large-scale, centralized procurement tends to bypass local suppliers in favor of national or global contracts. Regional wholesalers who once supplied a mix of local retailers may see their client list shrink. This gap carries through to trucking companies, independent warehouses, and maintenance firms tied into those local supply chains. Losing one big anchor client in that ecosystem can start a chain reaction that reduces demand for multiple related services. Independent couriers face a similar shift. Before Amazon built its own last-mile network, regional carriers could rely on overflow parcel work from larger firms or direct contracts with retailers, healthcare providers, or specialist shippers. As Amazon Logistics and its contracted flex driver fleet have scaled, more of that volume has moved under Amazon's control. By pricing its internal delivery service at levels that reflect the overall business model, rather than open market costs, Amazon can offer rates that small, standalone delivery firms can't match without steep losses. In markets where Amazon packages make up a large share of home deliveries, that shift has become particularly pronounced. Service providers outside the retail transaction chain, marketing agencies, IT support firms, local security contractors also feel the effect. Amazon still uses external vendors but generally consolidates those relationships nationally, dealing in high-volume contracts. That leaves fewer mid-sized local retailers and distributors as potential clients. Towns that once supported a healthy mix of professional services can see those opportunities concentrated in a handful of large employers, one of which is Amazon, and these large employers often rely on in-house systems for much of their operational work. Independent research has tracked patterns in retail and service business density before and after the opening of major Amazon facilities. Some metropolitan areas where large distribution hubs have been added since 2018 have recorded higher than average closure rates in categories like books, electronics, and apparel. Analysts note that Amazon is rarely replacing these businesses with its own physical outlets. Instead, the combination of local warehouse inventory and rapid delivery raises the bar for speed and price across the consumer base, making it harder for smaller competitors to hold onto their market share. Employment patterns also shift. Jobs lost in local retail or wholesale may be replaced in absolute numbers by roles at Amazon warehouses or in delivery. But these roles are structured differently, more segmented, more repetitive, with varying turnover rates. For some workers, wages may be higher. For others coming from skilled customer-facing roles, there's a loss of autonomy, varied tasks, and clear advancement paths. The change is as much about the type of work available as it is about the number of jobs. Wholesale pricing pressure adds another complication for local retailers trying to coexist. Suppliers keen to maintain their Amazon relationship may accept price terms that set a low market benchmark. When a hardware store buys from the same supplier, it may discover that the wholesale price leaves little or no room to undercut Amazon's retail listing without selling at a loss. The retailer's only viable defense becomes highly differentiated service or inventory, which not every business can pivot to effectively. The broader consequences emerge over years. Areas that lose diverse retail and service offerings often see reduced foot traffic in commercial districts. Businesses that depended on that traffic, from cafes to repair shops, then feel a secondary hit. Reduced physical shopping can feed back into lower local advertising reach, less informal sponsorship for community events, and less visibility for non-retail enterprises. It's not a single-cause collapse, it's a shift in the local economic rhythm. Academic work referenced in the background research, such as studies from Northeastern University in Data and Society, has described this transformation as a redefinition of what a small business can be in the Amazon era. A single-person operation built entirely on Amazon's marketplace might reach customers nationwide with minimal physical footprint, but that same system can undermine a traditional neighborhood store. Both are small businesses on paper, yet they occupy very different positions in the local economy. This duality is part of why some policymakers have argued the company warrants close regulatory attention, not only for competition and labor issues, but because of how it realigns entire regional economies. The reality is that Amazon can support and undermine small enterprises at the same time. Its own reports highlight how many small and medium-sized businesses sell successfully through the marketplace, using its infrastructure to scale far beyond what local sales would allow. Modern Retail has also covered how some sellers warned that boycotts or sudden policy changes aimed at Amazon could backfire on independent merchants who depend on it for most of their revenue. This complexity is easy to miss in the broader narrative, but is crucial for understanding the trade-offs. On the ground, some small businesses adapt by doubling down on unique inventory, personalized service, or experiences that can't be replicated with a buy now button. Local co-op marketing groups pool resources to compete more effectively on ad spend and procurement. Others exit certain product categories entirely, focusing on services or specialties where Amazon's model is less dominant. These strategies can work, but they demand capital, time, and a willingness to rethink long-established business models. For shoppers who want to maintain options in their local economy, one practical step is to check local retailers or independent online sellers before defaulting to an Amazon purchase, especially for higher value items or categories where after-sale service matters. Doing so won't reverse national trends, but it helps maintain at least some diversity in the marketplace that serves your own community. Over time, the interplay between Amazon's benefits to some businesses and the pressure it creates on others feeds into a much larger conversation about what kind of commercial environment we want in our towns and cities. That conversation doesn't exist in isolation. The very systems that allow most of us to get whatever we want, almost whenever we want it, have other costs built into them, costs that don't always show up in the price at checkout, but still have to be paid somewhere. The environmental tab coming due. One of the less visible impacts of Amazon's pace is environmental, and in 2025, that impact is attracting more than passing interest from policymakers. Rapid delivery models, sprawling fulfillment networks, and growing order volumes have created a footprint that regulators in multiple countries are now treating as a material concern. What was once a matter of corporate image has become an area where formal oversight and potential penalties are on the table. Amazon's 2-day and next-day delivery promises are built on a tightly integrated chain of air cargo, long-haul trucking, regional vans, and last-mile couriers. Each step requires fuel, and those vehicles keep moving whether the load is full or partial. Returns add another layer, reversing the journey with comparable urgency, and can double the transport emissions tied to a single transaction. Breaking up orders into multiple shipments to meet promised delivery windows makes logistical sense for speed, but it increases the per-item emissions compared to consolidating packages. Packaging is the other element under scrutiny. Amazon has spent years promoting its use of lighter materials, recyclable paper fillers, and programs like Compact by Design and Ships in Own Container. While these initiatives offer incremental benefits, the gains can be outweighed by the surge in total packages shipped. Millions of small orders, each in its own branded box or padded mailer, generate material volumes that municipal recycling systems struggle to absorb. Local waste audits in high prime adoption regions have reported growing quantities of mixed material mailers and plastic air pillows in curbside bins, items that are technically recyclable but often end up in landfill due to processing constraints. Because Amazon operates across so many markets, the environmental profile of its delivery system is now a multi-jurisdictional issue. In the European Union, proposed regulations would set packaging material quotas and tie compliance to fines for overuse. Other provisions under discussion would require large e-commerce operators to measure and publish data on last-mile carbon emissions per package, then meet staged reduction targets. Canadian agencies and several Asia-Pacific governments are exploring similar approaches. In the UK, waste policy proposals include escalating fees for retailers whose packaging exceeds set volume thresholds. Amazon highlights its own sustainability initiatives in response. The company has pledged to reach net zero carbon by 2040, is expanding a fleet of electric delivery vans, and promotes renewable energy investments to power operations. It has branded more than 800,000 items with its Climate Pledge-friendly label, marking products certified for lower environmental impact. The Amazon Ads 2025 sustainability study even emphasized that a growing share of consumers factor environmental performance into purchase decisions, a data point the company links to its own climate commitments. Yet these programs sit alongside the reality that many parts of the network still rely on conventional fuels and single-use materials, and the pace of order growth makes overall reductions harder to achieve. The operational trade-offs are visible in deployment patterns. Electric vans work well in dense urban markets with predictable routes, but the long-haul segments of Amazon's logistics system, planes, semi-trucks, intermodal freight remain predominantly fossil fuel-powered. Full conversion would require infrastructure investments stretching far beyond vehicle procurement, charging or fueling networks, maintenance capacity, and supply chain adjustments. Until those are in place, order growth in the most active prime markets will continue to add tonnage to the emissions total, even if some routes become cleaner at the margins. Regulators are aware of these structural challenges, but they are also signaling that voluntary commitments won't be enough. The EU measures under discussion would make detailed emissions reporting mandatory, with non-compliance triggering significant recurring fines. UK proposals on packaging waste would move from advisory to enforcement, charging per ton fees on material above limits. While US federal action is still a way off, state-level legislation in places like California and New York now requires emissions and packaging disclosures that could form the template for broader rules. This creates a bind for Amazon. The countries and cities pushing the toughest environmental standards are among its most profitable markets. Slowing certain deliveries, consolidating more shipments into single boxes, or expanding no-rush shipping could reduce the footprint. But each of those changes carries some risk to the customer convenience that drives prime retention. Incentives like digital credits for slower delivery have had only modest uptake without clear, immediate value to shoppers. Public sustainability reporting from Amazon stresses progress points, increases in renewable power use, expansion of EV fleets, innovations in packaging design. These are real, verifiable changes, but the reports are also complex, with metrics spread across scopes of emissions, supply chain partner data, and seasonal demand spikes. Complexity doesn't change the fact that many regulators are assessing impact in straightforward terms: total packaging volume, per package emissions, and whether those numbers are going down year over year. Returns are another hidden contributor. A lenient return policy is good for customer satisfaction, but each return involves transport back to a processing site, repackaging or disposal, and in some cases, additional delivery to a secondary buyer. Items that can't go back into the main inventory may be sold through liquidation channels, recycled, which itself consumes energy and resources, or discarded. These loops extend the environmental cost of each original purchase and are difficult to offset with efficiency gains elsewhere. The mix of regulatory tools under discussion includes packaging caps, emissions quotas, material taxes, and graduated fines. If passed and enforced in key markets, these measures could affect not just costs but core operating models. Inventory placement, shipment timing, and routing strategies might all need adjustment to meet compliance thresholds. Because the rules would apply to all large players, Amazon wouldn't be uniquely targeted, but its scale means it has more at stake, financially and reputationally, than most. In the near term, Amazon will likely keep foregrounding its investments in electric vehicles, renewable energy, and eco-certified product programs. But scaling these quickly enough to counteract growth-driven emissions is a harder problem. The operational efficiency that makes ultra-fast delivery profitable is at odds with many of the most impactful changes that would cut the footprint. For consumers, some influence is possible. Consolidating purchases into fewer shipments, opting for slower delivery when available, and looking for climate-certified products can all improve the environmental profile of an order. These steps won't solve the regulatory challenges Amazon faces, but at scale they would signal to both the company and regulators that shoppers will tolerate and even choose lower-impact options. What is becoming clear is that the environmental record of large e-commerce platforms is no longer just a public relations line item. It is entering the realm of enforceable policy, with direct implications for cost, operations, and market strategy. As those policies move from proposals into written law, the margin for delay shrinks, and the downstream business effects grow harder to contain. That shift in the regulatory climate is beginning to touch other parts of Amazon's model, setting the stage for a wider confrontation over how it operates in its most important markets. Regulators in no mood to play nice. Regulatory agencies are turning a sharper eye toward Amazon's core business model, and the level of scrutiny in 2025 is unlike what the company has faced in the past. Jurisdictions that once dealt with Amazon piecemeal, addressing a counterfeit issue in one place, a tax dispute in another, are now pressing forward with a more consistent appetite to tighten rules across multiple fronts. These aren't identical policies or a single coordinated campaign, but the trend is clear. More regulators in more markets are introducing measures that affect the way Amazon treats competition, handles customer data, manages its seller base, and meets environmental requirements. The European Union's current stance is among the most consequential. Building on the Digital Markets Act, DMA, and the Digital Services Act, DSA, Brussels has begun enforcing new obligations aimed squarely at the region's largest platforms. The DMA designates Amazon as a gatekeeper, subjecting it to requirements that include stricter data portability for users, transparent ranking systems, and limits on self-preferencing in search. Under the DSA, obligations go further for online marketplaces. High-risk sellers in certain product categories must be verified before their listings go live, and platforms can be held directly responsible for harmful or illegal goods sold through their sites if they cannot demonstrate proactive prevention. Missing these thresholds risks not just fines but structural remedies. Amazon is challenging parts of its gatekeeper designation in court, as reported by Reuters, arguing that its hybrid model of retail and marketplace sales is being treated unfairly compared to pure intermediaries. While that appeal proceeds, compliance deadlines are still in effect. Competition regulators in the UK, no longer bound by EU law, are running their own probes with a focus on market dominance. The UK's Competition and Markets Authority has alleged that Amazon's search and recommendation systems give undue priority to its own retail offers and sponsored listings, putting independent sellers at a disadvantage if they don't pay for placement. Possible remedies being discussed include requiring Amazon to segregate marketplace seller data from its own retail operations, preventing that information from guiding private label strategy, and capping the proportion of top search results that can be sold as advertising slots. That last proposal would directly affect an increasingly important revenue stream. In Germany, the Bundeskartellamt has launched extended abuse of dominance proceedings under national competition law, overlapping with the broader EU provisions. While the focus there is narrower, the themes are familiar: access to marketplace data, treatment of third-party sellers, and the interplay between retail and logistics services. Outside Europe, large emerging markets present a different set of challenges. India is refining its e-commerce rules to prevent what it sees as discriminatory practices against domestic retailers. Proposals include limits on deep discounting of goods sold directly by a platform and stricter rules for related party sellers. Brazil is weighing new taxes on high-volume cross-border sales and stronger enforcement of consumer protection laws. Indonesia has signaled that upcoming legislation will curb predatory pricing on imported goods that bypass local intermediaries. While these measures vary, each one increases operational complexity and can reduce the flexibility Amazon has used to adapt pricing and promotions market by market. The direct costs are starting to add up, even before counting potential knock-on effects. In one EU member state, regulators fined Amazon for failing to remove suspected counterfeit electronics quickly enough after official notifications, with per-incident penalties instead of a single lump sum. In the UK, early consequences from the antitrust probe have included the loss of certain institutional contracts, reflecting partners' unwillingness to risk entanglement in remedies that could alter service terms mid-deal. In India, a court has allowed a major consumer protection case to proceed over alleged predatory pricing and coercive supplier agreements, a move that could influence how similar laws are enforced in the wider region. Operational orders with immediate effect are also appearing. In one European country, Amazon was temporarily barred from advertising next-day delivery as a blanket Prime feature after failing to meet that speed for a regulatory-defined portion of orders. In another, permission to expand a logistics facility came with the condition that at least half of last-mile deliveries originate from zero-emission vehicles from the outset. These kinds of measures change planning assumptions in tangible, costly ways. What makes this moment more problematic for Amazon is not any single piece of enforcement, but the pace at which these actions are surfacing in separate, high-value jurisdictions. Regulators are watching the measures taken elsewhere, either in court findings, legislative language, or negotiated remedies, and adapting the concepts for their own markets. Specific wording on self-preferencing from one investigation can be referenced months later in a different country. Seller verification rules piloted in one jurisdiction become a model in another. It is an informal form of policy cross-pollination, driven less by formal agreements than by shared political priorities. For Amazon's strategic planning, that creates a new equation. In the past, when a particular jurisdiction introduced a disruptive rule, the company could weigh the cost of compliance or choose to absorb fines and keep operations largely unchanged. If the market size didn't justify wider changes, operational systems elsewhere remained untouched. Now, the appearance of similar rules across multiple major regions turns what might have been a local adjustment into an incentive for global redesign. Verifying every new seller in specific categories, separating marketplace and retail data systems, adjusting ad inventory ratios, or altering delivery speed claims, any of these, once repeated in a few large markets, become more efficient to implement universally. Investors follow these developments closely. Litigation and fines have always been part of Amazon's risk landscape, but the shift towards structural measures, caps, separation requirements, mandated functionality changes strikes at profitable aspects of the platform. Restrictions on ad density, limits on private label promotion, and enforceable delivery standards mean compliance can erode both top-line growth and margin. Environmental conditions like packaging quotas or vehicle emission caps might require capital expenditure that outweighs current logistics efficiencies. For sellers, the changes hold both promise and risk. Greater enforcement against counterfeit listings, explicit ad slot limits, and curbs on self-preferencing could give independent merchants a fairer field. But the burden of compliance, from identity checks to expanded documentation and environmental certifications, will often fall hardest on smaller operators. Cross-border sellers in particular may see certain markets become less accessible or profitable, potentially consolidating the active seller base. From the customer's side, any operational adjustment could alter the buying experience. Tighter delivery commitments tied to environmental caps may mean fewer ultra-fast options on some orders. Search result layouts mandated to carry more organic listings, and fewer ads might look simpler, but can change which products surface first. While these wouldn't necessarily drive mass customer loss in the short term, they chip away at expectations built over decades. Amazon is contesting some of these actions, appealing fines, challenging designations, and lobbying for changes to pending rules. But the public posture from regulators in 2025 suggests that arguments about the company's size and economic contributions carry less weight than before. Officials see openings to implement policies that address multiple political priorities at once: consumer rights, local business support, environmental protection, and market fairness. That combination makes such actions easier to defend across the political spectrum. The key question for Amazon is whether these converging pressures remain manageable in isolation or harden into a pattern that forces broader structural change. Each rule, order, or fine touches a different part of the operation, but taken together they reach into the systems that define its marketplace model. Adjusting to one is straightforward. Adjusting to many, across top-tier markets, risks slowing the company's ability to move quickly in pursuit of growth. If the leeway that allowed Amazon to finesse each market's rules starts to shrink, other players will be eyeing the space that opens up. And if regulators succeed in changing the conditions under which Amazon has long operated, the next question almost writes itself. If those customers and sellers don't stay, who stands to win them? Rivals that are winning the abandoned customers. In 2025, those customers and sellers not fully committed to Amazon aren't vanishing into the ether. They're showing up in the metrics of a few fast-moving rivals. The patterns suggest a split migration. Some shoppers are testing ultra-low-cost marketplaces promising steep discounts, even if delivery takes longer. Others are gravitating toward platforms that specialize in categories Amazon no longer dominates, where the buying experience feels more curated and less cluttered. Temu is the clearest case in the first group. Its app offers a sweep of categories: clothing, accessories, home goods, hobby items, at prices so low they undercut most Amazon listings by a wide margin. Delivery can take days or weeks, but for customers weighing a higher Prime membership fee against slower service and heavier ad clutter, that trade-off is acceptable. App Store data and third-party tracking show Temu's installs climbing sharply, with repeat order rates high enough to signal retention, not just curiosity. It even debuted on the American Customer Satisfaction Index in 2025 with a score of 75, lower than many established retailers, but making it onto that benchmark so quickly highlights how firmly it has entered the conversation. Shein sits in a different lane, but pulls from a similar customer willingness to look elsewhere. Grouped with Temu because of its overseas logistics, it has a far narrower focus: mobile-first, trend-driven fast fashion. Amazon's attempts to build its own apparel presence have long since been diluted by generic, uncurated listings. Shein exploits that gap, pairing constant product refreshes with app interfaces tuned to short-cycle shopping habits. In markets where fashion is already a mobile-dominant category, it has become a leading repeat purchase destination, pulling spend from Amazon's fashion segment without trying to compete on broader selection. A third example lies in category-specific specialists like Wayfair, which has consolidated its position in furniture and home goods by focusing on areas Amazon treats as incremental. Wayfair directs resources toward large-format delivery, room planning tools, and customer service tuned to high-ticket purchases. It's an approach that makes a difference for buyers replacing a sofa or refitting a bedroom, purchases where dimensions, delivery coordination, and after-sales support matter more than shaving a day off shipping for a smaller item. Grocery has seen its own shifts. Amazon's integration of Whole Foods into Prime never fully matched early expectations, and product availability can be patchy. Regional grocers and service-driven delivery apps like Instacart have stepped into that space, combining local supply networks with improved interfaces and reliable scheduling. In some areas, the time and cost advantage that once made Amazon Fresh an easy add-on has been neutralized by local competitors whose digital platforms are just as simple to use. The appeal of these alternatives isn't limited to speed or price. Some shoppers leave Amazon for checkout experiences that feel cleaner, fewer sponsored inserts, more relevant filtering, and results that reflect the category rather than add revenue priorities. In Temu or Shein's apps, the scope may be narrower, but the path from product to checkout can be more straightforward. That's an advantage for anyone tired of digging through distorted search results to just grab something. Direct-to-consumer brands add another wrinkle. Using social media and influencer partnerships, they draw customers straight into their own storefronts, bypassing marketplace search entirely. Once they secure that relationship, they can maintain it with loyalty programs, targeted offers, and fulfillment guarantees, none of which require competing with adjacent listings or paying for search placement. For buyers, it means a clearer sense of who they're dealing with, and for sellers, it's a way to build repeat business without intermediaries. Even allowing for the noise in year-to-year data, the evidence of repositioning is visible. Research-backed trends point to some consumers reducing their Prime orders while experimenting with low-cost marketplaces or niche players. Temu and Shein now hold identifiable slices of US and European online retail, small next to Amazon's total share, but significant in categories like fashion where Amazon's edge is thinner. Furniture, certain home goods, and local-sourced groceries show similar patterns, with category specialists inching in where Amazon's one-size-fits-all model underperforms. These moves can happen quickly because exposure to alternatives is constant. Social media adds surface-targeted offers, app store promotions highlight emerging storefronts, and influencer integrations nudge audiences into a first purchase. When Amazon stumbles on listing quality or relevance in those same categories, switching doesn't require much effort. Geography matters too. Temu's adoption is strongest where Amazon's shipping performance has slipped and where customers are less tied to ultra-fast delivery. Shein's highest repeat rates come from regions where mobile commerce is already integrated into daily spending. Specialists like Wayfair and Instacart win in markets where they can control the experience end-to-end without having to chase Amazon's volume. For shoppers, these shifts have practical implications. If the goal is to save money, it's worth comparing total landed cost, including shipping and returns, between these alternatives and Amazon. For those who value certain kinds of convenience over others, a slower but cheaper order from Temu or a category-tuned purchase from a specialist might make more sense than defaulting to a Prime checkout. What ties these competitors together is their ability to chip away at Amazon's habitual use. Prime works best when customers stop considering alternatives, but if someone starts using Temu for low-cost accessories, Shein for clothes, and a local app for groceries, Amazon has to re-earn each purchase. That erodes the all-purpose advantage and forces category-by-category competition. It's a harder fight, especially when the rivals aren't trying to replicate Amazon's entire breadth, just the portions where it's most vulnerable. The customer segments driving the changes are varied. Some are driven almost entirely by price, trading build quality or delivery speed for discounts. Others stick with Amazon for core needs, but migrate specific purchases to platforms that feel better optimized. In both cases, the impact compounds. A family shifting even part of its annual spend away reduces Amazon's advertising impressions, cuts into transaction fees, and lowers upsell potential down the line. If these behavioral changes continue, the result will be a market less dominated by a single retail hub. Instead, multiple competitors, some aggressive on pricing, some specialized in depth, can capture slices of business Amazon once held with little active effort. The combined effect is to loosen the hold of the Prime model, altering not just how many orders Amazon gets, but which categories are most at risk. In that sense, the competitive field in 2025 is less about one challenger threatening Amazon's existence and more about many smaller ones cooperating by accident. Each takes a piece, and together they alter the baseline against which Amazon is judged. The shift doesn't have to be fast to matter. Once the default choice becomes just one of several tabs open on a phone, the pressure is already working. Amazon's challenges in 2025 point to a value equation under strain. Customers face slower delivery, more cluttered search results, and higher prices. Sellers contend with rising fees, counterfeit risks, and reduced control. Local economies lose jobs and diversity. The trade-offs that once made Prime feel worth it are shifting, and if Amazon can't fix the balance between value, trust, and speed, its retail model risks losing relevance in parts of the market. To protect your wallet, audit whether Prime still matches your actual usage. Diversify big-ticket purchases to direct brand stores or strong competitors, and avoid impulse buys from sponsored first search results. Tell us, did you cancel Prime this year or try one of the alternatives? Why?